What if I told you that what happened in Barcelona this January with the SF26 may have marked the exact point at which Ferrari stopped being a failed promise and began to become a real threat to the 2026 title? Subscribe to continue uploading more of this type of content now, if we continue. Yes, I know. We are tired of hearing the same thing every year. This will be the year of Ferrari. But this time, they didn't say it, they showed it. Today you will discover why what happened in Maranello was much more than simple tests. It was a real technical madness that really can change everything. Ferrari arrived in January 2026 with an emotional, technical, and sporting slab that cannot be underestimated. They had failed, not in a symbolic way, but concrete, measurable, devastating. The most legendary team in Formula One finished the 2025 season in 4th position in the Constructors' Championship with a humiliating gap of 435 points compared to champion McLaren. It was not only a sporting defeat, it was a structural crisis that touched all layers of the Maranello project. And what happened next was so meticulous, so controlled, so different from the mistakes of the past, that for the first time in a long time, the entire F1 began to shut up and watch. Because maybe, just maybe, Ferrari had once again understood how to win. When Ferrari set foot on the circuit to Barcelona, Catalunya, at the end of January 2026, it was not looking for headlines. I was looking for answers. And what happened during the 3 days of shakedown was not simply a test session. It was a surgical operation to validate a project that had consumed thousands of hours of simulation, wind tunnel, and conceptual design. These tests were not the typical preseason program with fast laps to generate optimism. They were a war on uncertainty, carefully designed to uncover one truth. Does SF26 work as the data promises? Ferrari chose 3 very specific days: Tuesday the 27th, Thursday the 29th, and Friday the 30th of January. Not a random choice. Each of these days had a clear, delimited, and non-negotiable technical purpose. Tuesday was reserved for the basic evaluation of the car, checking reliability, systems, base correlation. On Thursday, if conditions were favorable, the door was open to long runs, race simulations, thermal data collection, and energy evaluation. Friday was left as a wild card, a final day of confirmation or adjustment, depending on what the previous days revealed. There was no room to improvise. Tuesday, January 27th. Day 1. The trial by fire. The rain came mid-morning. An unexpected challenge for any team, except for Ferrari. Because far from modifying its program or hiding the car, the Scuderia decided to exploit the climate. Charles Leclerc took to the track in mixed conditions, and Ferrari activated its active rain aerodynamics system for the first time on a real track. This system, an evolution of the classic DRS, not only adjusts the rear wing, but simultaneously modifies the front one, achieving aerodynamic balance in real time even under extreme conditions. Is a radical innovation within the new 2026 technical regulations. The car not only ran, it did so with a stability that had not been seen in a Ferrari for years. Not a single structural failure, not a telemetry alert, not a significant interruption to the program. In the afternoon, Hamilton took the wheel and completed the session with the same consistency. His words were clear, the conditions were very challenging, but the car responded. It wasn't about speed. It was about behavior, about validation. And the SF26 passed. Thursday, January 29th. Day 2. Total deployment. This was the crucial day. The most demanding. The one that would reveal whether the SF26 was ready not only to function, but to perform. Ferrari completed around 170 laps in a single day. That's more than 2 Grand Prix in accumulated kilometers. Hamilton rode in the morning with a focus on energy management, hybrid consumption, MGUK recovery, aerodynamic efficiency. Leclerc took over in the afternoon with full race simulations, including simulated pit stop sequences and tire thermal cycles. One of the highlights was the stability of the hybrid package. The new system, which now produces 350 kilowatts, up from 120 previously, requires a completely different thermal architecture. Failure here would have been catastrophic. But Ferrari not only managed to keep temperatures under control, but its power delivery curve was extremely linear. That means one thing: the car is predictable. And in Formula One, technical predictability is one of the most coveted assets. Various downforce specifications, regenerative brake balance settings, and different ERS mapping profiles were also tested. Each variable was monitored with millimeter precision. And what surprised several observers was the lack of need to redesign elements between sessions. There were no spare parts activated, no long adjustment sessions. Ferrari knew what was carrying, and that in pre-season is very rare. Friday, January 30th. Day 3. Confirmation. Last day. Last chance. Here we did see some search for performance. Not to set the best time, but to close the validation cycle with a final answer. Can the SF26 be fast when demanded? Leclerc clocked a solid 1 minute and 16.653 seconds in the morning. But it was Hamilton who dropped the bombshell in the afternoon. On an improving track, and with the most aggressive configuration of the test, he set a time of 1 minute and 16.348 seconds. That was the fastest time of the entire Barcelona shakedown, even ahead of George Russell's Mercedes. And he did it without appearing to push the limit. No locks, no corrections, just fluidity, just control. But what was truly important was not the time. That's how it came to be. Ferrari did not have to improvise. He didn't change his plan. He did not do artificial qualifying runs with little fuel. He didn't play the show. He just executed, like a team that finally trusts in its own work. An unusual conclusion for Ferrari. The plan worked. And that's what sets these 3 days apart from any other Ferrari preseason in the last decade. Because Maranello's biggest enemy has not been speed. It has been the inconsistency. The contradiction between what their data says, what their cars show, and what happens on the track. But this time, the script changed. The correlation between simulator and track was very high. The reliability, unquestionable. The ability to adapt to variables such as rain, traffic, or wear, confirmed. The SF26 project, at least in its initial Spec A, had shown that it had a real foundation on which to build. And in a sport where every millimeter counts, where every mistake is paid for with years of drought, that means everything. After 3 days of testing without errors, without red flags, without critical failures, and with a millimetric programmatic execution, the big inevitable question hung in the air. Is Ferrari really back? And answering that question requires going beyond lap times, optimistic headlines, or enthusiastic statements from drivers. Because when we talk about the return of Ferrari, we are not referring to a good day or even a good month. We are talking about the possibility that this team, the most successful in history, will once again be a credible, constant, and above all, respected contender. What the Barcelona 2026 tests left us was not a declaration of war in the style of Red Bull 2022 or McLaren 2024. It was something more subtle but perhaps more important, a demonstration of technical maturity and emotional control. Ferrari did not let itself be carried away by the need to show off. He didn't look for easy headlines. He didn't fall into the temptation of putting on a superficial show with low fuel or aggressive engine maps. They just worked. And that coming from a historically unstable team, when the cameras turn on, is a huge symptom of change. Charles Leclerc was clear in his words. He said the team had accomplished all of its plan, even managing to do more than scheduled. But the important thing was not his optimistic tone, but the technical subtext. Leclerc spoke of consistency, correlation, validation. Elements that in previous years were swampy terrain for Maranello. Hamilton, for his part, was even more revealing. He admitted to finding a connection in SF26 that he hadn't felt in a long time. Let us remember that Lewis came from a traumatic 2025. His signing for Ferrari had been received as an act of faith, a leap into the void, and in Australia, the car was not up to par. But now, for the first time, he hinted that there are reasons to believe. And that is exactly what is at stake. It's not just about immediate results. Ferrari doesn't need to win in Bahrain or Saudi Arabia to confirm that the SF26 is a success. What they need is to validate that this time the path has direction, that the decisions made in the factory, on the track, and in technical meetings are aligned. Because when there is coherence, even intermediate failures become stepping stones to something greater. But this is where the challenge becomes more complicated, because the Barcelona tests are a controlled bubble. It's a laboratory. No points pressure, no race strategies, no direct rivals fighting inch by inch. What comes now is the brutality of the calendar. The rawness of a season of 24 Grand Prix, with extreme weather, last-minute decisions, human errors, and constant media pressure. Can Ferrari maintain this level of focus when the reality of the championship enters the picture? Can he resist the ghosts that always return when Sundays arrive? Recent history suggests that is the real battle, and is not a technical battle. It's psychological, because Ferrari's great enemy has not been the lack of resources, nor of talent, nor of design capacity. It was anxiety, the need to win now, to demonstrate everything in each session, to live with the urgency of justifying the myth. The SF26 has what it takes to be competitive. There is no longer any doubt about that. But the real challenge now is something else: maintaining stability, patience, and consistency throughout the entire calendar. Don't throw everything overboard as soon as the first abandonment arrives. Don't panic if McLaren wins 2 races in a row. Do not repeat the toxic cycle of redesigning the car mid-year without a clear basis. What we saw in Barcelona was a breathing Ferrari. What do you plan? That controls. If they can carry that version over to every Grand Prix weekend, even in defeats, then yes, we can say that Ferrari is back. But if at some point they start to improvise, if they sacrifice structure due to media pressure, if decisions become emotional instead of strategic again, everything achieved in these tests will be lost. And they will return to the vicious circle from which they seem to have emerged. 2026 will, then, be the year of truth for Ferrari. Not because they have to win everything, but because they have to prove that they can build something real, sustainable, consistent, a project that does not depend on the weather of the day or the mood of the headlines. A team that, finally, understands that in Formula One, victory cannot be bought. It is built, round after round, week by week, error after error. Subscribe to continue uploading more of that content. Now you really think about all this.